separate track, and he told me that he thought the Attorney General was going to be indicted. And you know, since then, I think that this is probably right around the time that Jim Comey and Bob Mueller were in General Ashcroft's hospital room, and when he was in bed, and they were saying that this part of this aspect of the program was illegal. I didn't know about that going on, but I did know that everybody where I worked who were willing to talk about it, and not everybody was willing to talk about it, just assumed that we were doing something illegal.
Thomas Tamm, we're going to break, but we're going to come back to you, former Justice Department attorney who helped expose the Bush administration's illegal domestic surveillance program. He's paying a very serious price right now. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We'll be back in a minute. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We're on the road in our Community Voices community media tours. We travel to 70 cities in San Francisco today. I'm Amy Goodman. Our guest in Washington, D.C. is Thomas Tamm. He'll be receiving the Ridenour Prize for Truth-Telling today at noon. The awards ceremony will be streamed live at ridenour.org. Awards are also being given to Bob Herbert, Jane Mayer, and Nick Turse. Thomas Tamm, talk about the repercussions of that moment you slipped into the subway to the phone booth and made that call to the New York Times. Tell us what happened to your family and at your home after that.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. There's kind of two different periods in my existence during that time. The time before August 1st in 2007, I was basically the only person besides the two reporters who knew what I had done, and I was always kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I would occasionally get calls from the FBI agent asking to interview me, and I would try to postpone him. And really because I had this just, you know, disillusioned, I guess, with my government, and I was not really able to focus terribly well, I eventually kind of left the Department of Justice. In fact, I got out of OIPR largely because of what I believe was going on. But I never anticipated that the FBI would execute a search warrant on my house. There wasn't anything in my house. I don't think they had any probable cause to believe that there was anything in my house that might reveal a crime of some sort. And, you know, my wife, Claire, I don't think will ever quite feel the same in our house. She feels less secure. I mean, 18 FBI agents came barging through her front door and stormed up steps and awakened my kids in their beds and took Christmas card lists and computers and cell phones. And, you know, I remember my wife asking if we were going to be all right. And I said yes, but I really wasn't sure about that. And so now after the raid, I just figured it's kind of any minute that I'm going to be indicted. I was out of work for quite a while after I left the Department of Justice, and I got to the point where I would see someone that looked like an undercover detective or FBI agent and think that, well, here it is. I'm going to be arrested. I wonder what my bond is going to be set. And, you know, I don't know that I handled it as well as maybe I wish I had been able to, but it's been very difficult. And as you have mentioned, I still incur legal bills because we have not been told whether they're going to go forward or not. And I must say, I think that's a little bit surprising in light of the election and in light of the new administration.
Well, what about that? I mean, there is a new administration. Have they been in touch with you?
They have not. My attorney has contacted the Department of Justice lead attorney in the investigation into my acts, and he basically has said that it will be a matter that's on the Attorney General's desk, but it won't be one of his first concerns. And that's basically all we know. We haven't pushed it any further. I mean, they are still staffing the Department of Justice. Dawn Johnson, who has written some great articles and opinion pieces, law review articles about the wiretapping has not been approved by the Senate to join the Department of Justice, so perhaps that's one of the reasons for delay. But it's just, I don't feel like I can really commit myself to anything if there's a chance that I'm going to be indicted.
Are you sorry at all that you did what you did?
No. I regret what happened to my family. But to coin a phrase from the last election, I think I put my country first. And in light of the article today, that apparently they're still, even though Congress gave them even more extensive powers, they are still exceeding the powers that they've been legally given. And I would say, no, I don't regret it.
Thomas Tamm, I'd like to ask you to stay on for one moment as we turn to another guest. Concern growing, as you're talking about, by many legal observers over the Obama administration's attempt to keep secret key aspects of the Bush administration's counterterrorism policies. Earlier this month, in a closely watched case challenging the legality of the government's domestic surveillance program, the Obama administration invoked a state secrets privilege and a claim of sovereign immunity in an attempt to get rid of a lawsuit. Meanwhile, the Obama administration faces a deadline today to act on whether it'll release 3 classified Bush administration memos that authorize the use of torture. The Wall Street Journal is reporting Obama's wavering on a pledge to fully release the memos. To talk more about this, we're joined by Glenn Greenwald, constitutional law attorney, political and legal blogger for Salon.com. He's the author of 3 books, his latest, Great American Hypocrites, toppling the big myths of Republican politics. Glenn joins us from Brazil. Glenn, what about the latest news?
Well, I think it's one of the 2 interesting aspects of it is that, number one, the article suggests in the Times that these abuses are not Bush-era abuses, but are abuses that are, according to the article, ones that took place in, quote, recent months, and that the abuses were caused by the 2008 FISA law that the Democratic Congress, with the support of George Bush and Barack Obama, passed. And at the time, the opponents of that bill, across the board, were warning that what this bill does is it guts all the core safeguards that had been in place since the enactment of FISA in 1978, and that the exact kind of abuses that this article reports would be essentially inevitable. And the other aspect that's worth noting is, as you just said, ever since he was inaugurated, Barack Obama has been running around, sending his Justice Department, running around the country, blocking all lawsuits that are ones that are brought against the National Security Agency and the Bush administration, alleging that the NSA was illegally spying on the emails and telephone communications of Americans. He's been arguing that those programs are too secret to allow courts to look into, let alone adjudicate the legality of them. And so he's been protecting from disclosure the very abuses that the Times this morning reported.
Glenn, can you talk about the significance of the Juul versus NSA case?
Yeah, that is an amazing case, because what happened was in 2008, when the Democrats voted for that FISA bill, part of what the FISA bill did was it immunized the telecoms from the lawsuits that were pending based on this illegal spying. And what the Democrats said at the time was, well, don't worry about the fact that we're immunizing the telecoms, because we're not immunizing government officials, the Bush officials who ordered the illegal spying. You can still impose accountability on them. And so the organizations that had brought the lawsuits against the telecoms took the Democrats at their word, like EFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation, and they commenced lawsuits against the Bush officials who ordered the illegal spying. And that was a lawsuit commenced in October of 2008 called, that's the Juul case that you just referenced. And in October 2008, the Bush administration said to the lawyers who brought the lawsuit, well, we don't really have time to answer the lawsuit because we're going to be on our way out the door in January, so we'd like to extend the time to answer into April of 2009, so the new administration can be the ones who handle this lawsuit. And, of course, the plaintiffs' lawyers were ecstatic. They thought, well, of course, we'd rather have Obama answer the lawsuit than Bush. And yet, last Friday, the Obama administration, the Justice Department, filed the first response to this lawsuit, one claiming that the Bush administration illegally spied on Americans. And what Obama said was, number one, that the program that the lawsuit is alleging occurred the activities that it's alleging are too secret and grave national security harm would result if the court looked at this program and ruled on whether it was illegal and thus demanded its dismissal. And then the Obama administration invented a brand new radical argument that not even the Bush administration had espoused that says that the government is